Marisa, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we just did had a couple of conversations, and the stuff that I want to talk about. You mentioned something about that inner calmness, right? When I was, I guess I was 54, and I moved to Doha, and for the first time ever, I had a woman as my boss. And she had this amazing, I learned so much from her. She had this amazing skill where she was like the stillness of the water. Now, she might have been the duck paddling rapidly underneath, but she could deliver the harshest news in the calmest, most professional, you could even argue the gentlest way. And she had a great skill at it. And I used to comment on it. I said, this is what if I learn nothing else from you, I want to learn how to do that. And so it's something that you talked about just now. And it's something, I guess, that you're striving to achieve for yourself. So early on in your career, would somebody then accurately have said that you were passionate because maybe anger showed through?
I think I've got, so externally, I think people would always think that I'm quite calm. And I have a strong belief that whatever your position you're in, it's up to you to stop the stress from coming down. So I would like shoulder a lot of that. So no matter what level I've always been in, it's like, okay, absorb that and then make it productive for other people, rather than be one of those people that comes out of a meeting room and is like, oh, like this was horrific. Now we got to do like. So I think people will probably say that I'm calm, unless like my real trusted circle that I would share it with. But it is like a visceral feeling for me when something, it's against my values. It's not like a work stress. Like if I'm really busy and, we've got like tough targets to meet, I'm fine with that. But if it's something that's misaligned to my values, then I feel like I could just, and I would say it upwards, I could lose it. So maybe not like filtered down to the team. But if like, the CEO is asking me to do something that I disagree with, I'd be like, fundamentally, I'm not going to be the person to do that. So, I really push back. So I think some people see it and some people don't. But inside, it can be like, eat me up, keep me awake at night.
One of the questions I asked earlier was tougher to lead men or women. And you don't think there's a real difference between the sexes?
I think for me, it can be different being like led by a woman or led by a man. But for me personally, to lead either, because I am a woman, obviously, I try and bring, like, if I have a feminine energy to something or a masculine energy to something, I just bring me. And I think that's relatable to people. So it's not that style that you see where some women, particularly before like this generation, some women in this generation, because it's tough, have kind of emulated that masculine leadership style. That's hard to be underneath, because you're like, well, I don't want to be like that, but there's nobody showing me how I can show up. But for me, I've always brought exactly who I am. And I think, therefore, women who are in the team relate to that, and men relate to that and respect that. I think there can be challenges with different cultures, particularly, different people from different countries. Here, they see women as potentially more like housekeepers or mothers. And I think that can be quite difficult. But again, I just try to like do my job, not prove myself because I believe in myself, but show people like what can be. And then that kind of changes over time.
Throughout your career, when you've had challenging colleagues, are they more often men or more often have they been women?
Probably to peer, maybe women. And then within the team, probably men, I think. So like the competitive side, like eagle to eagle, I see more women than men, because I think men are quite straightforward and less likely to let things fester, and there's a right and a wrong to that, I think, but it's more kind of like out there and blatant. You can have a discussion without it being like repeated to everybody else and, talking about it. But I overcome that just with direct conversations. If I ever feel that with anyone, man or a woman, I just take them, like, we'll go for a coffee and be like, hey, what's up? Like, I was thinking, like, we were going in there to collaborate in this meeting and it completely backfired or whatever it is. But I think downwards, don't like that language, but within the team, probably men.
And do you think it's partly because, and maybe I'm projecting here, but I'll ask you, are men more competitive than women in your experience?
Yes.
And one of the books that I was most helpful for me, I've led newsrooms where I've had so many people, that I've worked with, and I was a basketball coach by the name of Phil Jackson, and he has a book called 11 Rings, because he won 11 championship rings. One as a player and then 10 as coaches. He coached Michael Jordan and then Kobe and Shaq with the Lakers. And he used to say that you don't treat everybody the same, you treat everybody fairly, right? So the way that you might have to interact or treat me or manage me is different than, another person, male or female. And that to me was incredibly helpful, because I realized my job is, as the line manager, is to meet you on your terms so that you're feeling more comfortable. And I'm then, as a line manager, getting the best out of you, and hopefully you're feeling empowered and you're also committed to the job. And, if you're committed and feeling empowered, then you're probably in a good place mentally as well. So the book that you had mentioned earlier, you had talked about empathy being important. Is it because that's something that's transferable to men and women? It's just the human condition where we want to sort of be understood in that same sort of way?
Yeah, for me, it's exactly that. It's understanding each individual, like what they need to help them to be successful. And men and women both need that. And I think there's a lot of conditioning on the male side as well to be like, oh, we talked about emotion, but you shouldn't show emotion. And actually, that's just years worth of conditioning. That's not right. So for me, it's about understanding everyone on an individual basis, what makes them tick, what makes them happy. We all have such different ways of working. And to your point, as a leader, that is your responsibility. It's not the team's responsibility to adapt to you, and that is worth its weight in gold if you take that time to really understand people. And then they get so much more from it. First of all, people feel valued and the culture is great, which is the number one thing. But secondly, efficiency, profitability, productivity is all like too. So, yeah.
One of the issues that I struggle with sometimes is, I had a job recently that I got fired from, and my line manager, I felt that my job became trying to manage my boss. And that just seems like that should not be the way. And yet, and you'll know this, it's not as though you can go to HR and say the boss of the company is insecure, incompetent, and is faking it till he tries to make it. And so my job is now managing, like, HR will not in any way be able to give me constructive feedback. So in your situation, when you have, as part of your support network, and you're talking to other women and you're trying to get them to that point where they're getting everything they can out of the job while also contributing to the company and to the betterment of the team, what do you say to them when they have to manage their boss, male or female?
Yeah, so firstly, I think that kind of corporate culture, when that happens, it's pathetic. And I think and it's rife, right? So it's nothing new.
No.
But anything that I create or want to be a part of, I don't want any of that at all. And it makes my skin crawl, really, when you think about those managers, how have they got there, But that's managing upwards. It's people being focused on numbers and not the long-term numbers, not the bigger picture. But I think to stop it, companies should have proper mechanisms in place to be picking up 360 feedback and changing that, You shouldn't get big bonuses if your team aren't happy, effectively. But you need to think about the mechanisms to do that within. When it comes to women in Gaia, I think there's two parts to it. We move the dial by policy, and we move the dial by the way that we show up. And I think the way we show up is far more powerful than waiting for organizations to give us a lift up or, to support us. I think a lot of the challenges that we have is because we're not being ourselves. And so when it comes to dealing with difficult managers, if you're able to just challenge stuff, first of all, and be like, hey, that doesn't feel right, or, having these conversations early, I think can make a switch. I think managers as well, lack self-awareness sometimes, and they could be promoted without the right support. So I think it's important to become comfortable having difficult conversations first and foremost. And then I think if you're not getting anywhere and you see sometimes it is a blocker, that person's not going to leave and the company's got their back, then I think leave, go on to bigger and better things. Or like move departments, do some, don't sit there and wait it out. Like say what you need to say, and if nothing's changing, move on.
So the organization that you're working with, Gaia, you founded,
Yep.
Yes. So walk me through some of the biggest issues that you hear the most often.
I think because we work a lot on, so each month we meet in, it's quite a large community, but we meet in smaller groups of like 8 to 12, and we help each other to resolve issues, opportunities, and challenges.
So somebody will come up with an issue, a scenario, and then everybody will try and sort of pitch in.
Yeah, exactly, like a group coaching. So it's quite formulaic in the way that it works. So somebody will come in thinking an issue is one thing, and they will leave thinking it's like completely different. And a lot of that is around conflict and particular individuals or culture within companies, and like, how do you change that? And really, it always boils down to difficult conversation, preparing, and can you have it? And also how you feel about yourself. Because I think sometimes when things are like this within organizations, your boundaries go in everything, So then you're working all hours in a place, you don't respect your boss, you don't think the organization respects you, you're not moving up, but you're giving up everything as well to go with it. And actually, when you start to shift that mentality and start to think you're worth it again and build up some positivity and stop all the people pleasing, the stickler or like controlling stuff, and start to let go and really kind of, I guess, embed and bring back some of who you are, that's where we see the biggest shifts. But I think normalizing difficult conversations, how much do we avoid and how much time do we waste thinking, especially women, we percolate on stuff. For me, one of my biggest saboteurs, which I've worked on, is like avoiding difficult conversations for the sake of like everybody else. But actually the impact this had to me over the years is, and there's a big lie that I play myself in, that I've played in my own head, which is by avoiding this, I'm making other people's lives easier. But I'm not. I'm just preventing them from growth because they're not receiving immediate feedback either. Right. So there's a lot of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've been married for 34 years, so I know the amount of hours, maybe even years worth of sleep that my wife has lost.
Yes.
Thinking about things, right? So when you do have some of these conversations, you're as aware of this as anybody. Don't you also recognize that there are always two issues at play in any corporation of a certain size? I think there has to be a minimum number of people, but there's the work, but then there's the culture and the BS and the HR mandated crap that has to go, so you have to almost play the game, right? And we were talking about how sometimes incompetent bosses rise to the top. It's because they know how to play the game so well, right? And the work is secondary, and they know it's secondary. Is that tougher? I would imagine it's tougher for women. Is that the case, you think?
Yeah, I think we are perhaps more likely to want to be in an environment that's more aligned to our values. It's harder to separate the work from like ourselves, like our identity. So, when people say, I'll just go in, do 9 till 5 and then leave, and then everything's like percolating in your mind. So yeah, I do think it's harder for women. I also think though that what we have today in corporate structure and corporate culture, I think that's going to change in the next, hopefully sooner, but over the next decade, because the younger generation are completely different. You know, like they don't suffer fools. And I really love it when people say, you know, like Gen Z are lazy and all of this stuff, and they don't know how to work hard and everything that comes with it. But actually, I think they've got it right. You know, you spend most of your time at work, so you need to enjoy it. Companies need to make it fun. You need to be making the most out of people's skills. We've got all of these tools now to take away all the boring stuff. So we need to maximize on the people that we have, and it needs to be human centric. So I think it's going to change. And I'm quite excited to see what happens now with the corporate world.
Okay, so I think it's going to change too, but my kids are 29 and I've had this conversation with them. And I've said, and stop me if you think I'm wrong, I've said, I think things will change because we learned an awful lot during the pandemic, but I think it'll change when you are in a position to make a change. So I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. And I'll give an example. Jamie Dimon, who of course you would be very familiar with, you know, has recently said that people have to be back in the office, and you can be cynical about why they have to be back in the office because of the real estate and all that other stuff. But this is an old white guy who's in a position of authority who's going to say, I want it this way because I want it this way, and everybody's going to have to go along with that. Am I wrong? Do you think it's going to change much sooner than what I think?
Yeah, so I just don't think talent will go in, you know. So like people are more likely to have 3 or 4 jobs at the same time. We're less likely to study one subject, for example, because basically with AI, you have like all your SMEs in your back pocket at all times. So
look at all the coding that was talked about years ago, and now it's no.
Exactly. So I just think like real talent in the tech space, which is what everyone wants right now, they're not going to work like that. So you can either continue with that like dinosaur mentality, or you can be like really successful and
ahead of the curve
and give people what they want. And then it's like, who is going to want to work for these big clunky old banks anymore if they're not offering that?
Well, because the money might be so good that they'll sacrifice some of the mental health.
I don't think they will. I think this kind of like, you know, people going for the money is getting old now. Like, I mean, we get it because we're a bit older, but the most important thing in my life is time now. And you could double my salary, you could treble it, and I wouldn't go now. I wouldn't take away my freedom. And I'm like 40, you know, and I feel like anyone younger than me, come on, guys, if you're watching this, like I know it's different because I'm a bit more stable now, and it's given me the opportunity to do my own stuff as well. And I appreciate that. But still, time is the most important thing in life.
So the next 5 years, it'll change, or 10 years?
5.
Okay, 5. And give me a couple of specific examples, because most companies, we're in Dubai, most companies here, at least the companies that I sort of interact with, so a lot of media and PR companies, will usually have at least, say, 1 work from home day, right? Give me a few examples, specifics about how you think culture or work environment or work in general will have to change so that my kids at 29 will be interested in working for that company.
Well, I think, first of all, like I would say Dubai is a bit behind, if I may.
I agree with that, yes.
In terms of the working from home culture, like lots of companies, even big organizations are like, work where you want. I was in Google in Singapore a few weeks ago, and Google is obviously, you know, up there. It's not exactly clunky bank, but they're like, just work from wherever you want. My friend works there. She's like, I just need to clock in for like 3 hours per week, basically.
So they know you're alive.
So they know you're alive, pretty much, and that's it. And also there is a bit, of course, like being around people is very like good for you socially and therefore for the work as well. And if you're learning and you're new to train, you need to be around people, so you're constantly like absorbing that. So I think it's just creating those environments where if you're in the office, it's because of co-creation. So it's those days where you're running your like agile sprints or your like meetings that require people there. But for the mundane stuff, let people get on with that at home, or the time where you just need to like get your head down and do it, then I think let people be at home. From a global perspective though, and you know, specifically here, we have businesses popping up all over the place, right? And they're not having their teams here, they're global. And you get to take the best of like everyone in the world. So I have people working for me in South Africa, Philippines, and then coaches here, which I need face to face. But everything else is outsourced.
Okay, so now, Professor Scott Galloway, you probably know, a fellow white bald guy, has talked about how he says, now he focuses a little bit more on what's good for young men, right? And I'm not sure if that's 100% of what he believes. I think it is a lot of what he believes, but I think there's also an opportunity to generate a little bit more revenue and some clicks as well. But he talks about how, the work from home thing is probably one of the worst things in the world, certainly for young men. I have 29-year-old twins, a boy and a girl, and I think that working from home has helped my daughter. I don't know that it's necessarily helped my son. Do you think, though, that, getting to your point, that maybe we're a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, and maybe, to Jamie Dimon's point, maybe you have to trust us and it's better for you to be in the office, maybe not 5 days a week, and if you've got a family and kids and you need to work from home, that's different, right? Because you're sort of your family outside the office is set. But do you think that there is maybe, as the elder people, that maybe we know a little bit better and maybe this would be good for people to be in the office?
I think it's a mix. So I think it's not necessarily about working from home. I think it's more about flexibility and trust than it is like, of course it's good for you to be around people, absorb, learn, work together. But if we look back at like what the hours that we've pulled in the office and the sacrifices that we've made as well, like, yeah, it has its upsides, but also there's downsides. Like, what would we have wanted then? And for me, it's like you earn trust first, and it needs to be like performance needs to be outcomes focused, right? And then if someone, to the point of being fair and giving different things to different people depending on their personal circumstances, that's earned on trust, and that's like flexibility. So you should be able to go and watch, male or female, go and watch your kids' school play in the middle of the day without having to make like a big excuse for it or like begging for the time. And some roles require you to be in the office and some don't. So when I worked in banking, the big thing that we had was, the people in branches, like, well, everybody's working from home now and we have to come into the branch. I'm like, of course you do, but like, how do you reward people for that? And like the admin work that they used to do to try and carve out, okay, like we have a rota on Friday, you can go be at home for 5 hours and just do all your admin stuff and forget about it for the rest of the week or whatever, just to try and give people that, or give flexibility in a different way.
So your story, for those who don't know, give us a recap of how you recognized corporate life in the banking world is not for you.
Yeah, so for me, I spent a number of years in banking, maybe 15, 16 years. 10 years of those were at HSBC, and I literally covered all areas of the bank, from like group strategy, finance, performance management, risk, compliance, product, across Latin America, UK, here. So most recently, I was the regional COO for the UAE and the Middle East. And I decided to leave a few years ago after a series of events. And I look back now, it sounds sad, it is sad, but I look back now and I'm so grateful that it was like the triple, because it's what I needed to realize that it wasn't for me. And the money's too good, right? We talked about that. So I needed something so bad to happen to me that moved me on. So I had my daughter, Paloma, she's 4 now, not a bad thing. But I had postnatal depression, and then I ended up in hospital with pneumonia, which was life-threatening. And I look back now, it's just because I wasn't looking after myself. I wasn't prioritizing my health at all, trying to do too much. And then shortly afterwards, HSBC had a conversation about making some changes to my role. The job was safe, but they were making some changes. And for me, I just felt like I'd given 10 years to this place, and I've gone through what I've gone through. I've never had one sick day in this whole 10 years, which is ridiculous, right? Just work through it. And they're not there for me when I most need them. And I just decided that it was so misaligned to my values, and like I would never do that to somebody, like particularly with that triple of circumstances, that I just couldn't work there anymore.
So I wanted you to say all of that because my question is, do you think your situation for a professional woman, is it unique?
No.
And that's the frustrating part,
Yeah,
right?
that was the big shining light for me, was like, if it can happen to me, top performer, one of the youngest managing directors in the bank, and I'm female, and I've given like my youth there, it can happen to anybody. And it's not unique to HSBC either. It's like a global crisis.
Yeah, I would imagine it is. So when you encounter women who are going through something similar to what you would have gone through at that time, what do you say to them? Because they may not be in a situation where they're able to walk away from the money, or maybe they're still very much in denial about how important their title is or the company they work at. What advice do you give to them so that they can maybe continue to stay, but at least they're going in, there are no more illusions, right? They know that they are a commodity and that their company sees them that way. What are the conversations so that they feel, okay, they're going with their eyes fully open now?
Yeah, I think it's a switch, right? So all of a sudden you realize that you are just a number.
Right.
And I'd been put at risk before of redundancy, a few years before, but I knew I could see the business case. You know, they were like dissolving the office, moving it to another country. I was like, okay. And if I wanted to move to that country, I could, but I want to move to Jersey.
Right.
And so I think when it's a flick that switches, and then for me it's like, okay, so how do we work on you feeling good about yourself again and getting confidence, like, and realizing that it's not you, it is a company decision, because it's not personal. You know, what happened to me felt incredibly personal, and I know the people that did it to me, and it felt like an attack, you know. And to the point that I made earlier around what's the biggest mistake I've ever made was allowing some, not as bad, but like I wish I'd done more, to happen. And so being in it, I just thought, how could you do this to me? And so for me, it was like, how do I rebuild my own confidence? And that's what we work on. So looking at, like, you know, your strengths, self-awareness, what's the real good stuff now that we can double down on and start to build that back in. The worst thing is when you've had a baby, you're like a completely different person anyway. You feel like, you know, you've been through it 29
sort of.
years ago.
I've been through it from afar.
Yeah, and it really does hit differently when all those hormones are like that.
You said something interesting there. Do you think it's a case of women have fallen into the same trap that men have, where women are so, men will often, their identity is tied to their job. And do you think that one of the challenges that you face when you're helping coach women is that they're in that same predicament?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of what we work on is like separating yourself from the job. And actually, when you've done that, people become way more successful as well. I see that, like, that innate confidence build. They're asking for stuff. They're being like braver, you know, because you're not tied to it. You're you, and you go and do something, you know. And it took me a while when I left to HSBC to not be like, oh, I'm the regional COO. Like, what do you even say?
Do you think that, and I'm not advocating for you to open it up to men, but do you think that men would also benefit from the same sort of community environment of support, where it's maybe don't have the confidence without the aggression, have the confidence without the job title?
Yes. So people have asked me, you know, like, why don't you do this for men? I'm like, well, I'd love to, but I'm one person, and Gaia is like really building. And my husband jokes saying that he might start Giza. But it's true, you know, like, they're actually...
Be a good name,
yeah.
too.
You see, like, you know, there's a reason why men have the highest suicide rates and stuff, because they're not talking. And
yes,
I don't think men show up authentically at work either.
I agree.
Like, I think you put on this like big masculine energy front that might not be true to them. And I believe that we all can tap into the feminine and masculine energy. Like, generally speaking, I'm probably quite masculine in energy with lots of things. Like, I'm quite direct, straightforward, you know, where...
Firm handshake.
You know where you stand with me, you know. And if something needs to be done and it's urgent, I can flip the switch to take a more authoritarian approach,
Right.
but it's built in trust.
Right.
And so people feel like it's coming from the right place and they know it's safe.
Right.
Whereas I think when you're unsafe and somebody's always shouting at you and like being overly aggressive, that's where the challenges are. And so I think there's definitely space for these kind of things with men as well. And then, you know, to bridge it and bring it together in some way. But I think we're probably a little bit away from some of the conversations we have.
I think, you know, you talked about authenticity, which I think is huge. I also think that there's a certain level of confidence. And if you can get the people you work with, I don't want to say women, but if you can get the people you work with to feel more confident about who they are, not necessarily tied directly to their job or their title, then that confidence, I think, the two best bosses I've ever had were incredibly confident, but they were also confident enough to say, essentially, in a non-aggressive way, like, prove me wrong, right? And I try to do this where I'd like to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Tell me how it's wrong. Tell me how it's not going to work. I would say this to colleagues, people who are often much younger than I am, because I think you can learn from them.
Yeah.
And I have the confidence to be, that's better than my idea, right? And is that the sort of environment or the sort of confidence that you try to instill within the women?
Yeah, exactly. And we also work with organizations. So we run in-house female leadership accelerator programs within organizations. And actually some of those are men and women together, which is quite a nice dynamic. And it's amazing how people within organizations, you know, like big organizations, they're just not talking to each other. So that thing around like building confidence with each other and those around you, that really helps, because we're just opening the door to like conversations that should be happening without us.
Right.
And we see a big shift because of that. But absolutely, it's about like, how do you get confident as well in saying that I don't know everything, so this is my view, where are you at?
Right. And how do you teach, since you work with women, how do you teach women, because I'd be curious as well for men, to be their more authentic self at work, where they traditionally might feel, but if I show that I don't have all the answers, I'm exposing myself. How do you get them to that point where they are comfortably being authentic?
Yeah, so it starts with small things. First of all, it starts with like understanding who you are. So we do a lot of work on like your leadership DNA. So what are your values? What are your like non-negotiables? Like what makes
And these
you
are
tick?
these are like they follow you no matter where you go.
Yeah, like who are you
Right.
actually? And like what do you think you're like showing at work versus who you are outside of work? And I think the more, there's an exercise called the Johari window exercise. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's basically 4 quadrants, and you look at like open, what people know about you and you know about yourself, what's blind, so what other people see that you don't see, what's known to you but not known to others, so what are you keeping inside, and then what's unknown, so what have you never tested before, what do you not know you're good at, like is it public speaking, for example, you've never tried, could be in there. And then we work on the more that moves to the open area, so you know and I know about me, the more successful you'll be and the more likely you will be able to connect with others, because there's nothing like you're hiding, you know, so your self-awareness increases. So that for me is like, okay, so what's open, what's hidden, and you know, how can we then start to move into the open? But it's like trying things in a safe space, you know, so maybe outside of a formal governance meeting, but just saying, look guys, let's brainstorm this, I actually don't know about this, or have that one slightly challenging conversation. And because of Gaia and because of the group, it drives accountability. And I think that's the biggest difference, because if you said you're going to do something and the group have helped you for the last like hour and you haven't done it, then there comes a whole lot of like guilt, and you know, it just really drives accountability for people to take action.
And how long, if you were to look back over the course of the sessions that you've had, how long does it, are there moments, are there takeaways right away that the women can sort of bring into their environment so that they can start to see that things are going in the right direction?
Instantly. So
Really?
yeah, it's incredible. So I wake up, like we have an app and platform and stuff, and I wake up every day to like just messages on the community, people sharing their wins, and it's just amazing. But in each of those sessions, it's a fully fledged membership. There's loads of networking stuff to it, but the deep part is these sessions that I talked about. And we'll have a topic. So it might be like navigating and influencing change, boundary setting, conflict, personality profiling. And then we do the issue and opportunity stuff where we help each other. And we give people frameworks in every session. So something to take away. So like, how would you position that conversation, or how might you talk about that boundary, or how do you even establish what that boundary is? And then you have like, you know, a soft boundary and a hard boundary. So, okay, with the soft boundary, that's something I feel like next week I can have that conversation. The hard boundary, I'm going to see how the soft one goes first. So it's very practical. And I didn't want to create a network which was like surface level, or, you know, exchanging business cards, but like you're not really developing as a result. I wanted something that was deep and really outcomes focused. And so that's what we try to create and emulate in every session. And we see like massive shifts.
And is it, and I guess people will come in with different goals and expectations, but is it so that a woman can get better at furthering her career, or is it so that she can actually just be a better version of her and therefore also a better leader?
Both. So most people, I would say, join because they feel like they don't have their tribe and people that they can have these deep conversations with about leadership stuff. I mean, it blends into the personal every time, you know,
Sure.
it's so connected.
Right.
Because we have our friendship groups, but you don't take up airtime with your friends talking about work. And actually, my friends do all very different things to me. You know, very few have been in like leadership positions, and very few of my friends are part of Gaia, for example. And so really they join to be able to open up and have those discussions. And then they start to see like, oh, actually, this is really changing my life. You know, like yesterday, someone posted on the app to say she was having a really bad day yesterday. And then she just, because of Gaia, was able to open up to like people at work and a few Gaia members. And it completely shifted the way that she felt like through the day. And she just never would have had those conversations before, never would have had that release. You know, I think day before somebody else posted and said that their top saboteur was like 10 out of 10 people pleaser 6 months ago. They retook, there's a test, positive intelligence test. They retook it like last week and it was 3 out of 10. And she was like, that is literally the result of like Gaia. It seems it's such a simple concept, really.
So with Gaia, you started it how long ago?
Just over a year ago.
Okay. So
14 months.
what you went into that wanting to do, is it what you're doing now, or has it sort of evolved, grown, changed, and you've recognized, oh, I started there, but actually I need to do more of this?
It's completely evolved. So I really started it because I didn't have that community. And I was like, oh, cool, I'll set up this group. You know, there'll be like 10 of us. And now there's like almost 100. And I want it to be like deep. I want people to be from all over the world, all different backgrounds, united by like director level plus for this. And now and it started off just the peer group setting. And now it's a full 360. So we have different tiers for like different levels of management and leadership. We're in Abu Dhabi now as well. And the corporate stuff. So I've moved my whole business to this. Whereas before I used to have a separate D&I consultancy. And it's also now developed into a full 360 model, like mind, body, soul. So we'll have strategic networking sessions, but we'll have wellness networking sessions where we literally on Kite Beach scream, ground and cleanse event, like screaming, cleansing it off in the sea and then meditating in the beach. We have a monthly sound healing, monthly yoga. So it's giving people the tools that I wish I'd had when I was in those really stressful positions. So it's like a full membership. Like if you move to Dubai and you're a leader, it gives you everything, a full kind of like support and integration. But yeah, and I take feedback all the time to like make change. It's amazing, really.
Well, I think the feedback would be making you that much more relevant for that much longer.
Yeah.
My last point is that I really do think that you should start the male equivalent.
Yeah.
100%, because I'm sure that you've had lots of crap bosses who, as I have, and I'm sure you've had a couple of good ones. And it would be so much more helpful, I think, if men could go into, too often, like there are a lot of these, the man cave sort of kind of ideas, right? But it's usually tied to physical fitness. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But we also know that there are some men, like that's not their jam, right? They just want to maybe come in and learn how to be a better leader, right? Or they recognize that they're stuck in mid-level position for too long and maybe they want to move up. So I would say you've expanded to Abu Dhabi. Now you need to expand to men. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I think I probably need like a man to lead it to create that space. Otherwise, it would feel like probably.
I
Feel a
agree
bit
with that,
awkward.
but you said your husband earlier.
You could,
Get him
he's
to do
very balanced, actually. He's like, yeah, maybe. Although he quit. Yeah, he's similar story. He quit corporate for a startup as well. So,
But I bet you if you took this question to one of your sessions with all the women, they would probably say, my God, I wish that my boss, who's a guy, would actually be a little bit more aware that there is a better, more gentle, and more empathetic way to sort of interact with people, right?
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I try to work so much with younger journalists is because I hope that in that sort of karmic way of the universe that my kids will end up with a good boss somewhere along the line, right? So if you can, or your organization can teach men, then I would say that's a good thing.
Yeah, I would love to, because you see, all the greats like Simon Sinek, Adam Grant, Brene Brown, like talking about it, and they play all that stuff a lot in corporates, and then I wonder how difficult it is, particularly for men, to translate that into action. So I would like to.
Yeah,
This space.
I do think that men don't have that place where they can go. You may have your community where you can talk about sports and you can talk about some personal things, absolutely, but where you can go specifically to talk about the challenges that you're facing at work. Or I do think that most people, men and women, they want to do good. And I just don't know that they always have the tools. You're giving the women the tools. And, I think, and I say some of this stuff learning about how many women I've worked with compared to how many men. And certainly in the media sphere in this country, there are a lot more women than there are men. And I think that yet there are still, of the three major newspapers, there's only one is a woman. The other two are men. And so I think if men can become as good as these things as you are, then I think that would be a good thing.
Yeah. Do you think it would be harder to get men to sign up?
I think if you were able to sort of reach those, if you did like almost like a survey where you found out from men, like what are the challenges? If you could, in a sort of anonymous way, explain to me what it is that you're facing, that you wanted to get better at. If you could find out what those touch points are, and then I think you could build something around that, because you need men to sort of accept that they don't have all the answers. And as somebody who's married, you understand that, the joke is, of course, that men will never ask for directions, right? So if you can get them to understand that there are ways that they can get better. And I also think maybe you need to sort of say, this will maybe help you move up in the ranks, or it'll help you have a better relationship with your spouse because you're bringing less crap home at the end of the day. But, almost like do this and it'll help you with that. I do think that there are ways to get men more involved, but I do know that sometimes it'll take somebody calling them out saying, you think you know everything? What about this? What about this? What about this? Or it's, sorry, I'm just spitballing here, but if you were to sort of say, you could probably decide who's a good leader and who isn't based on them answering a few questions. What's your immediate reaction to this and this and this? And if you could get men to answer honestly, you could probably say, okay, you answered those questions that way. Actually, you should have probably answered them this way, which would have indicated that you're a little bit more, of a better leader. If they can see like, oh, I'm failing here, then I think they might feel more comfortable going down that road.
Yeah, I like it. And I do the real change is going to happen with allyship, right? That's the biggest thing. And it's just, if you impact one person, like I think about all the women in Gaia, impacting one, the ripple effect that has through like thousands of other people that work with them is really powerful, And if you could do the same with men, then yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Marisa, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.